Hello, my audience. Greetings. My newcomers, my name is Jake. Welcome to my YouTube channel, where I will be reviewing Tom Cruise Mission Impossible. The original one and the latest one up to Final Reckoning. I give each one a 10 out of 10. Sure, the more they go on, the less sense the stories feel like they made sense. But until you realize the story's this window structure. Window dressing, basically. The story doesn't matter. Sure, the story's idiotic. So was the first one, no good story. Idiotic story, but man, it had cool action that was kind of jaded for his time, but it had a dynamic team, but was half talented dynamic team as the ones that got killed off early on in the movie, was the first 1996 Mission Impossible movie that Tom Cruise starred in. This is where his character Ethan Hunt, played by Tom, goes under radar because he's been framed for murder takes the hit for his team. Then we find out later the main character of the show was Jim Phillips behind the whole thing. The murder behind his team. He faked his own death. Then we'll leave the blame to Ethan to take the fall. And then he gets dirt on Jim by putting the camera on, the camera glasses on him, and so he's now exposed and outed to the MIF, higher up. And know that Phelps basically gives Ethan the upper hand to clear his name. Shoots his girl cold blood for some preemptive reason when she asks him not to kill Ethan. And then he gets killed off gruesomely for shock value, along with the other character that betrayed Ethan. It was a team member, one of his team members. Gets killed off also, working with Phillips. And an explosion, exploding helicopter explosion. Now, this is all fine and dandy action. Oh, it sadly was the first one, Mission Impossible movie. The action is really not the best part of the movie. It's actually the weakest part of the movie. But that changed in that kind of got changed, the course corrected, and MI2, known as Mission Impossible 2, abbreviation for, with Tom Cruise playing Ethan Hunt again. This time the action is more practical, real shot action, and less CGI fake action shot you see on camera that Tom Cruise is doing. First time in the franchise, you see him do real action that's actually there. And it continues on with that movie formula where MI2 kind of marks beginning of a new era where the action will be more practical and less CGI going forward. And however, this also marks a problem where the Mission Impossible movies will be going forward. Focusing so much on spectacle, it doesn't really take its time developing a story and crafting identity of its own. And making sense with its world-building logic. Along with poor editing choices, feel like sloppily edited out of the movie, like plot points, when it's not Ethan Hunt doing crazy stunts, played by Tom Cruise on camera. And that's where MI2 falls flat. And the sequels after MI2 of Mission Impossible 2. Well, I appreciate MI3, known as Mission Impossible 3, which Tom Cruise tried to dial it down a bit with the whole extreme violence. I also kind of missed the whole extreme violence that MI2 was going for, that Ghost Protocol kind of put back in. However, the plus side is Ethan's more well-rounded this time as a character. More written, really grounded to the plot of the movie, was like more grounded than he was in MI1, I say. And relevant to the plot of MI3. However, I feel like we kind of we did kind of, MI3 is not exactly a step forward, but it's not exactly a step backwards either. Similar to MI2. It was kind of similar to the first Mission Impossible movie, how it's not a step up from the original OG show, but it's not a step down either. It's just trying to find its identity throughout the movie. But it was a great run with the 1996 film and the sequels I talked about so far, of why I'm giving each one a 10 out of 10. Oh, I told you that, okay. So, yeah. So, goes to fourth one, MI4, known as Mission Impossible 4, known as Ghost Protocol, is where the team first time in their career have to go rogue, not just Ethan going rogue and him becoming a team of his own. After his whole real team got killed off. And Phillips was behind the whole thing. Remember that name, Jim Phillips. That's going to come back in Final Reckoning. That character. When I talk about it in this video. So, what I appreciated about Ghost Protocol, really showed the more of a team dynamic that the show focused on better. With like the whole team like working and communicating and trying to get the mission done. Not knowing if you think they can do it or not. I think Ghost Protocol really focused the best formula from the show and took it to a big budget level. With Tom Cruise reimagining of Ghost Protocol. Which is why I think today's the best Mission Impossible movie of the bunch. Because I really think this one took the best sincere love letter effort maximum in trying to please the OG fans of the show by showing the most team dynamic of the team and not just being the Ethan Hunt story played by Tom Cruise. Actually, probably for the first time, Ethan Hunt had like less screen time because he had people to bounce off of. Even though he just had much screen time as ever, he felt like, you know, a less overhyped character that felt overused compared to the first three ones. That I felt he overused himself in the first three. But in the fourth one, Ghost Protocol, feels like it feels like Tom Cruise finally found his foot in the door and know what to do with the franchise from here on out, and kind of just duplicate the formula that he did was perfected with Protocol. from here on out. Which brings us to the 5th Mission Impossible 5, known as MI5 list. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I forgot the second pop name for a brief moment, okay? Rogue Nation. Rogue Nation is focused on the enemy of evil, twisted, fate, MIF. That similar to Ethan Hunt's team. So, Ethan's team is being targeted and being framed by the evil MIF, who they all assumed that was a folk myth, but turns out it's real. And gives Ethan the message and challenges Ethan and his team. And they called the Syndicate, I believe, if I got that right. So Ethan and his team have to go rogue under the radar again against their fellow superior officers' orders, and to prove the evil MIF is real, and that's the stakes, you know. And they eventually get the upper hand in the end, but not through trial and error, and just when you think like the movie's over, you think they got all smart. Turns out the bad guy walks right into a booby trap. The main villain of the film. The movie wraps up, gives our heroes their happy ending, and until the 6th one, Fallout. Mission Impossible Fallout, I think, is my second favorite Mission Impossible movie, next to Reckoning Part 1. My 4th favorite Mission Impossible has to be Rogue Nation. And my 5th favorite has to be the newest one, Final Reckoning. And I think the least favorite one is the first one, because it's the one I can say the least good things about it that I liked about the movie. Story-wise and aesthetic-wise, in terms of spectacle, both. For the 96 flick of Mission Impossible that Tom Cruise first started. I mean, for what has such a rocky start, really grew into blossom something quite magical and special by the 4th one came. And it just got on a roll since, what's the formula? And once, Tom Cruise feel like he kind of perfected it and found what he knew what he was doing, along with the filmmakers knew what he was doing with the franchise when they brought him back for the 4th one. I just feel like, the 4th one's just it's just not just the first time it really perfected the formula to try to please the fans of the show, even though the team went rogue, but it kept focusing on the team dynamic, like the show was focusing on the team. This really made the team feel important of the Mission Impossible franchise. The show felt like the most identical to the show's formula, despite it having a bigger budget and bigger stakes than the show ever had, was having the team go rogue. That didn't happen in the show. Ethan Hunt is basically the Mila Jovovich of the Mission Impossible franchise, as in, he was never a real character that debuted in the original mythology of the show. He was a character exclusively made for the movies. But the Asylum franchise was his character. That was the fictional original character for the movies. Original one. As Ethan Hunt debuted in the first Mission Impossible movie, while Jim Phelps debuted in the show, the character. Even though on the show and the movie, they're played by 2 separate different actors, play the role of Phillips. I like when we get to Final Reckoning, we meet Jim Phillips' son, and he has the same name. And the guy that got sick and poisoned by Easton and his team in the first one, and stole who got him. It turns out he got fired from his job and met the love of his life because he got fired from his job. And he thanks Easton for making his life better and bringing him happiness and finding the love of his life because of him. And the Final Reckoning. And I thought that was a nice movie how he gave Easton back the knife that he left behind all those years ago. And 1996 flick, he hands him his old knife back. That was cool at that moment in cinema history, where the MI franchise reference in the first one, and making the first movie not just feel like a pointless movie but relevant to the franchise. That's what I liked about Final Reckoning a lot, and also Reckoning Part 1, called Dead Reckoning Part 1, while the sequel is called Final Reckoning. The best part of these movies is the mythology and world building, and next to the realistic, real scary, next to the real stunts that Tom Cruise pulls, that takes stunts to another level. Dangerous stunts for film history. It's just amazing. This guy performs and acts in his own stuntman. Pretty cool. In this movie franchise, I enjoy. That's why I give Mission Impossible movies 10 out of 10. Tom Cruise Mission Impossible is a 10 out of 10 franchise. Worth binge watching all of them. I recommend. Give it a 10 out of 10 for a great spectacle. Go big or go home, I say. And these movies went big. This whole franchise did. Good job, impressed me with the spectacle. And it's a great imagination of this world building. And getting the films to connect and make sure none of them feel like pointless waste. Okay. Subscribe to my channel. Like this video. Goodbye. See you in the next video. Looking for the off button to shut my video and end it. Here it is.